Hello, my name is Dason Ortiz, and I'm here to show you a quick little tutorial. Actually, it was a tutorial request by Judy, one of my customers from Motion Master Templates. And what she wanted to do is recreate kind of a Spotify playlist that she can use inside of Final Cut Pro. So what she had sent me was a Final Cut Pro project. Let me move myself out of the way here. A Final Cut Pro project, as you can see here in the canvas. But the problem she's coming across is that the layers are starting to pile up and starting to get a little large as far as the project, as far as organizing and all that. And my advice was to create this inside of Motion. The benefits of creating this into Motion is that we have a little more control. We can also create this into a template. So when we do future projects that require the same playlist, but just we want to change the text, we want to change the graphics, we want to change the actual drop zone images, we can do that quickly, and we can use it over and over and over and over again. And it's just one drag and drop, place it, and we're done. Instead of, I do a lot of graphics inside of Final Cut Pro, but when it starts getting a little complex, that's when I switch over to Motion. Motion is at this time a $50 animation program that ties into Final Cut Pro. That's what I use to create all the animations that you see on my store at motionmastertemplates.com. So let's get started. This tutorial I'm just recording as I go, so I might make a few mistakes. But what I'm going to try to do is kind of explain how I would do this if this project came to me. And if anybody has any requests for future tutorials, please let me know. My goal is to help as many people as I can. So let's get started. So what I want to do is I want to move this image inside of Motion. So first I wanted to do, Judy had sent me this Final Cut Pro project and with all the elements and how she had set it up, so I can kind of get an idea of what she's trying to accomplish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just create this playlist, not the background. The background, I'm going to leave it blank so you can add your own backgrounds in the future. If you want to change it up, add your own image behind, or anything you want to add behind, you can change it in the future. But I'm going to keep pretty much everything. I'm going to keep all the icons. I'm going to keep everything as much as possible. The only things I'm going to change so people can change in the future is the titles, the by user, and the 100 songs. It looks rather simple, but sometimes I like to, get a little involved, and it might get a little longer. So let's get started. So first I'm going to do is I'm going to right mouse click inside of Final Cut Pro, and I'm going to go look for this graphic, reveal in Finder. Okay, here it is. Here's the image. And I'm just going to look quickly over here to see how she has it set up here. So, okay. Got it. All right. So we have it here. Now we're going to open up Motion. And inside of Motion, I'm going to create this, and I'm going to make this into a Final Cut title. So a title is something that allows me to put over videos or media. And it's a really easy way to just add title effects or overlays on top of my media inside of Final Cut Pro. So I'm going to get started and do this as a Final Cut title. The frame rate, I'm going to change it to 60 frames a second. And duration, what I'm going to do is, this is frames. So I'm going to delete that, 00, seconds, and minutes. So I'm going to make this 10 seconds long. And delete the 0, and I'm going to make this 10 seconds. And 1920 by 1080. I'm making it 1920 by 1080 because the image, the size of it is pretty much, that's the size. If we look at the information on this image, I thought it'd tell me the size here. Created, modified. Oh, I can see it inside of Final Cut Pro though. If I click on the image, the image is actually 744 by 1280. So I'm okay making this at 1920 by 1080. I can always scale it down a little bit. There you go. So it fits in there. Click OK. Click Open. And the first thing I can do is I can delete this type text here because I don't need that right now. I'm going to relabel this as the background. And I'm just going to minimize it. And I'm going to leave that alone. That's my background. So when I open up Final Cut Pro and I use this as a template, everything that I have on my layer underneath the text is going to be this. I guess it's a drop zone, but it's really just the layer that's underneath the title. And the cool thing about this is that if I want to add some effects to it or filters or anything, I can apply to that. And when I bring it into Final Cut Pro and I put my title on top of whatever's underneath, whatever media I have underneath, that effect or filters will be applied to that layer. All right, so let's do that. Now I'm going to open up, I'm going to go here, I'm going to add object, and I'm going to add a new group. In this group, I'm going to call it the Spotify list. Playlist. And now I can bring that in here, this image that was sent to me by Judy. I'm just going to drop it right in there. Done. So now what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start altering the things I need to alter. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to start with the first playlist here. So I'm going to cover up the things that I do not need. But actually, before I keep going, I'm going to save this project. So in case I have a system crash, I don't want to lose this. And I'm going to call this Spotify playlist. And I'm going to create a new category. I'm going to call this one Judy, since it's for my wonderful customer, Judy. And create. And actually, I'm not going to give it a theme because we only have one thing. So I don't have to give it a theme. So I'm just going to click Publish. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start covering things up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw a rectangle right over the song section, or the whole playlist section, just to cover up what I have there. Okay, and then I'm going to select that rectangle, make sure it's selected, go to Inspector, click on my little eyedropper under Fill Color, inside of Shape, Fill Color, Eyedropper, and then I'm going to select anywhere that's in the area where the playlist is. So we match the color. So now it looks like I just erased it. So it's kind of like a whiteout, and I just covered it up. But instead of white, I'm using the color of the playlist. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to start creating the text that's going to go on top of there. So let me zoom in a little bit. I click on Command plus, and then I hold the space bar, and that turns this into a little hand. When I do that, I can kind of move my canvas around. So I'm not actually moving my elements. I'm just actually, when I hold space bar and click and drag, I'm actually moving the actual canvas around. So now I want to kind of recreate that playlist section right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now select my text tool, and I'm actually going to use this bottom row as a kind of an outline of what I'm going to create. So I'm going to just click and drag. I'm going to make this long enough, so I kind of, in case the name is long in the future, I'm going to have it end right around here. All right. So, and now I'm going to type in the text over here. So I'm going to call this playlist 1. All right. And now I'm going to bring the size down by clicking and dragging on the numbers here. And I can just drag here just to get about the size I want. The other things I want to do is I want to center the vertical alignment to the middle. And that's pretty much it. Okay, so now what I want to do is I wanted to change this font. So I'm going to save. Motion does not do auto save. So you want to always keep saving whenever we do like some major breakthrough or we do any advancements. I like to hit save, and I like to just get into the habit of always hitting save. So I'm going to change this font, and I think I'm going to use Helvetica because it looks kind of like a Helvetica font. I could be wrong. I selected the font. It looks right. I'm going to select my my transform tool. And I'm just going to bring this straight up. I'm going to hold the shift key so I can bring this straight up. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that here. I'm just going to lay it right on top so it kind of matches up. And now I'm going to do the next line, which is the by user 100 songs. All right, so I'm going to click on Command D, that duplicates that first layer. So Command D. In this one, I'm going to call it by user. Okay. And I'm going to drag this down. Okay. And I'm going to bring, and I can just click on the actual numbers and then use my down arrow keys. And this allows me to bring the numbers down. So I kind of want to match that one with the, there we go. Around there. And remember, I can always zoom in if I want. Hold the space bar and then move it around. I can bring it down a little bit. I can make this 20. I think that would maybe 21. That's about right. So that looks good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the text right here in the text box here. I'm going to call this by user, and what is that dot? Here you go, emoji and symbols. So I'm going to go in emoji and symbols. I'm going to open that up and I'm going to look for that dot. I think there might be a search in the top. Here you go, top and dot. So here you go, click on that. We're not trying to replicate this to be exactly the same. If we want to, then we can mess with the kerning, but these texts are just placeholders because later on we're going to come in and we're going to add our own name and make it whatever we want. So right now, this is all placeholders. It's just to kind of line things up, make it look as close as possible. So now that we've done that, we're going to go to Appearance. And now we're going to click on this little eyedropper. We're going to hover over one of the texts and then select it. So now I want the color to match that previous color. So now we have these two graphics done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to group them together. So I'm going to click on the first one and then I'm going to click Shift and then select the next one, that group, and that selects both of them. And then I'm going to right mouse click and I'm going to group them together. And what this allows me to do is it allows me to move them at the same time. So now what I'm going to do, actually I'm going to call this one group 2. That's going to be the second group. And then I'm going to duplicate that in the top. And then I'm going to call this one group 1. I can delete this copy word. But now I'm going to just drag this up. I'm going to hold the shift key as I drag up so it keeps everything aligned. And I'm just going to bring it right up there and just drop it. All right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. I'm going to drag this rectangle and I'm going to put it inside of the first group. So now this first group has everything together. It has that black rectangle, the first playlist, and then the by user all in one group. And now I can select that rectangle, duplicate it, and then I'm going to bring it down to the group 2. Delete the copy. And then I can bring this down, hold the shift key, bring it down so I can kind of cover up that. I can bring it up a little bit. And I can also use the properties tool if I want to kind of get a little more fine tuning there. And there we go. We got playlist 1, playlist 2, and I'm going to change this text so it reads correctly. Format, playlist 2. There we go. We got 2 things done. So we have one more thing, and that's to add that drop zone. That's going to be whatever's going to be added inside of this square. So I'm going to hold my space bar and drag this to kind of move it over so I can see it better. I'm going to go to group 1 and I'm going to save and then going to add a drop zone. So I go to the top, add object. I'm going to add a drop zone. Make sure you have that group one selected. So when I add that drop zone, it's going to go in there. Oh, it didn't go in there. So I just drag and drop it in there. And I'm going to bring it down underneath. Actually, it could be right above rectangle. And I'm going to go over properties. And now I need to just scale this down. So I'm going to type in under scale, I'm going to type in 10. Maybe too small. Oh no, that's just right. But it's just down here. So now I just need to bring this up here. And I'll try to scale it down a little bit further. So it kind of matches. There we go. Let's go to 8. And that looks really good. So right now, as you can see, when I move things around, everything gets kind of snapped. I could turn snapping off too if I want. So if I can't find something right away, I type in snap. There you go. The view. So it goes in the view. And I can turn snapping off. Snapping is very useful if you want to kind of line things up with other objects that you have on your creation, or if you want to line it up with the center of the actual entire canvas. So right now I don't want that. Type in 0. I have a really big habit of just kind of using even numbers when I work with this. So now we have that done. So now what I can do is I can either add a mask to that drop zone, or I can just crop it. So what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to add a mask just so we can see how masks work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that bottom rectangle right here so I can keep things aligned. And I'm going to select here in the corner and then drag with my rectangle tool. And there's the rectangle. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my transform tool, holding the shift key, bringing it up. All right. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right mouse click on the drop zone and add image mask. Okay, now that creates a little drop zone well for me to add my image mask. So all I have to do is drag that rectangle that I just created right onto that image mask well on top of the actual layer, or we can drop it over here. And bam. So now we masked that element off. So now the cool thing about using an image mask versus cropping or actually drawing an image mask on that is that I can actually go in here and move that drop zone around. See how I can move it around? So if I need to center it up a little bit, I can still do that. I can do that with properties, click on that and just use the arrow key. And when you use the arrow key, you can just go 1 pixel at a time, or if you hold the shift key, it jumps 10 pixels at a time. All right. And let's bring that and then we can also move the rectangle independently as well. There we go. Beautiful. So now we have this whole group. And then also when I use that rectangle as a mask, just be aware that it kind of mutes it, which is what we want. We don't want to see the actual rectangle, the white rectangle. We want to use it as a mask reference. All right, so now that that's done, you see if I turn it off, you can see that's the original. It's not perfect as far as alignment and everything goes, but we're not going for perfection here. We're just going for something that's very similar. And if we have more time, we can go in there, fine tune it, do the kerning and all that. But right now, we're just trying to get it as close as possible to get this project done and out the door. So now that we got group 1 done, now what I can do is I can actually select this first rectangle and then the second rectangle. Click Command C. I'm going to go to group 2 and then do Command V. So that I'm going to copy and paste that to my next group. So now I just have to line this one up a little bit. So I can click here and just Actually, that was right. And I want to bring this down a little bit. No. So actually, I bring my drop zone up a little bit. So I'm going to have to bring both of them up a little bit. And what I can do is I can also group these things together if I want to move them together. I can group the rectangle and the drop zone. Now I can move them both at the same time. Like that. Beautiful. So I just want to cover the old rectangle that was there before. So now we have group 1, group 2. So now do we want to create this whole process all over again? Not necessary. Now we can, since we have this group 2 and group 1 already done, since I was using group 2 as a template version for part 1, both of those are done together. So what I can do now is I can just select group 2, do a duplicate. And when I'd like to bring up my outlines, you see how it hides all the outlines of the actual elements and it comes back on. What I do is I click on Command / or Command ? So this way, when I don't want to see the outlines of my elements and I just want to see what I'm working on, I can turn it off. And when I need to start moving things, I can turn it back on. So now I can move this group 2, bring it underneath, or group 2 copy and bring it underneath group 2. I'm going to change this and call it group 3. Now I can bring this down, hold the shift key, bring it down and put it right over the next one down. And now I can open this up and I can call this one playlist 3. Remove the copy here. You don't have to. This is just me, just being finicky. I'm going to go in here, group playlist 2. I'm going to change this to, so we don't get confused later, playlist 2. Okay, now I go to group 3, select playlist 3. I'm going to change the actual text itself to playlist 3. All right, and now we do the same for the next one. Select group 3, duplicate, bring it underneath, double click, delete the copy, delete the 2, and just call it group 4. Bring this down, start dragging, and then click shift, and then I just bring it down right over. I just use the arrows here. There we go. That's group 4. And I'm going to also go in here. All right, so now we're going to do playlist 4, group 4, and you know, we can go remove the copies, one copy 1, but I'm not going to do now just to kind of speed this tutorial up. So now I'm just going to go in here, but I am going to change the actual text just so I can, there you go. So it looks nice and pretty. Oops. All right, so now I'm going to minimize that group 4. And I just have to do this a few times. So I'm going to fast forward because I'm just doing the same thing. I'm going to select group 4, duplicate it, drag it underneath, same thing we did before. Call this 5. Go here. Also, very important, I should have called this out earlier. Make sure that all your text that you want to be able to change inside of Final Cut Pro has this toggled on, which is inside of Format, Editable in Final Cut Pro. So that means inside of Final Cut Pro, all you need to do is double click on that text and you can customize the text inside of Final Cut Pro. So make sure I hit save, and I'm going to do the last 2. Okay, and one more. So we're going to duplicate that, call this 7. All the time when I work, I like to remove all those copies and make everything pretty, but for time purposes, I'm not doing it. So, and these are things if you have time that you want to do, but if you're crunched for time, just skip it. You know, you can always come back to that later. Group 7, I select Shift Z, so it kind of centers everything up. So now we have everything done. So what I like to do also is I go to project, make sure that I have, okay, the drop zones are not publishing. So I'm going to have to manually go in there and publish. When you go up to the top inside of your layers, you have a little layer called project. And that's where all the parameters you publish, all your drop zones, everything goes in there. So right now you see that only 2 elements are in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unpublish these 2. I'm going to start over. And I'm going to go to that. That's 6. And now I'm going to go to each drop zone in each group. Click on drop zone. I'm going to save again. And I'm going to go, and what I like to do is I like to call this drop zone 1, 0, 1. And then I'm going to publish. When I click publish and I go to that project layer, you'll see that's in there. Okay, now I'll go to group 2. Open a little subgroup. Select that. I'm going to you can also see down here in your timeline, you can also see everything. So if you run out of room over here, you can't see the name of something, you can always see here. So this one's going to be group drop zone 2. And I'm going to go up here and publish. Go to the next one, group 3. Group 3, select that. I'm going to relabel this 03. And right here where it says source media to the right, there's a little arrow that points down. Right, click on it. Don't right mouse click, just click on it and publish. Same thing with group 4. Drop zone. Double click there. This is now number 4. Got to keep an extra eye on this, make sure I don't mess up again. And publish. And now we're going to go to group 5. Getting close. Group 5. And this is going to be group 5. And publish. Now we're going to go to group 6. Open up the subgroup. And select that drop zone. I'll do it here. And this is number 6. And publish. And yes, number 7. So now we have all this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now we have all 7 drop zones ready to go. Inside of Final Cut Pro, we can just drop in images and we're pretty much good. The other thing that I saw inside of the Final Cut Pro that was sent to me by Judy was that she wanted the person's name up here, playlists. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do the same thing as I did before. I'm going to, let me just close this. So I'm just going to close that here. I'm going to create a new group in this top header. All right, so top header, we're going to add a text tool. We're going to go to text tool, select our text tool, and click Command / and I'm just going to draw a box right around playlists. Actually, I can give a little bit longer in case the name is longer. Okay, and actually I'm going to stretch this out even further here this way. Kind of even it out. All right, that's it. And what I'm going to do is inside of properties, well, I'm going to just make that even 35. That looks even. Okay, 485. And now I'm going to add another rectangle. And actually I'm just going to redraw it here. I'm going to draw a black, actually it's going to be a rectangle, and then I'm going to change the color to match the Spotify color that it has there. So I'm going to go to shape, eyedropper. I'm going to select somewhere right around there. Oh, it's the fill color, not the outline color. There you go. And just make sure to put that rectangle underneath text. Nope, what happened to it? Oh, I don't have any text. So persons playlist. And actually, I'm going to mute the rectangle for now so I can kind of see underneath. And I'm going to bring this down to 20. I'm going to bring it up. And this font, I'm just guessing. If you really want to go and find exactly what font Spotify used on their playlist, what I'll do is do a screenshot of one of the words and go to a website called What the Font or Squirrel Font. And there you can actually add the image in there and it'll tell you what font it is. So right now, like I said, I'm just trying to do a tutorial just to get this thing going. The client is not really particular on making everything look exactly the same. It's just kind of, we're just trying to play off the Spotify playlist just for fun. So, okay. And now once that's done, we want to center it using the alignment center and vertical alignment center there. And now we can turn on that rectangle. And there we go. So now we click save. Save. We're going to open up Final Cut Pro. And I'm going to use the same timeline that was sent to me. I'm going to open up the text browser. I'm going to go to Judy. Remember, I created this under Judy. And now I can just drag and drop this onto the timeline. And here we go. Does that look beautiful? All right, so now if you want to change text, we can just click on the actual text, double click, open up the inspector here, and I'm going to make my super duper playlist. Super duper playlist. There we go. Isn't that beautiful? I can click next one. Okay, give it a second. And playlist, whatever. It could be happy, fun music. And then I can select the next one underneath, and I can just call this, I'm going to double click on by user, and I'm going to use my name, and let's say 102 songs, just so you can see that things are working the way it should. All right, great. And this will work on all the other text. Let's do one more just so you can see it works. Let's put some love music in there. And same thing, we're going to use this one. I'm going to do it by user. Same user, Jason. And this one will have 110 songs. Great, so that works. Now the drop zones. Now if I click on the text icon here, the text inspector, I can actually click on the drop zone well. So that'll be for the first one. Now, open up Photo Slideshow Maker. Let's look for something that has a person's image. Let's use, there you go, this one right here, looks cute. And for the next one, I'm just going to add a whole bunch of stuff. Click Apply Clip. This is telling me that I'm editing between libraries. These images I'm grabbing from another library, which is a photo and video slideshow maker that I will be releasing soon. And you'll see how it works in a future video. But I'm just bringing those images in from a different library into this library, which I said, okay. And there we go. Look at that. Isn't that cool? And now what I can do is I can actually double click on these drop zones and I can actually move them around, place them. So now it took a little bit of work to create this template, right? It took a little bit of work to create it, but now in the future, you can see how much time it's going to save you. So now I just, instead of actually going into Final Cut Pro, duplicating all these layers that we see over here, trying to match things up and go change the text, now we just go in there, double click, change it, and we can actually even publish all this text if we wanted to. So we can actually publish it to underneath. Let me show you right now, just to make, since I'm here, I might as well show you what I mean. So if I go back to Motion, I'm just going to do one. So I'm going to do on the top header, I'm going to stay on Format, and I can go in this little arrow, and I can publish that. All right. So if I go to Project, you'll see it's published text. I can bring this all the way to the top, and I can call this top header. Header. Okay, and now I can go to Group 1, and I can go to Playlist 1. Same thing, I'm going to publish this. And I'm also going to publish by user. Publish. I can go to Project. I can change the first one, call Playlist 1. And the next one will be called by user 1. I can select both of these, Command, select, and bring it up here. Unfortunately, I don't know why, but Motion doesn't let us double click on the source video to relabel it, because I would like to relabel this so it's drop zone 1, drop zone 2, and such. But we get the idea. Sometimes what I like to do is I like to create little, which I can do this in a future tutorial, how I create little separation titles so things are a little easier to organize and find. So anyway, I'm just going to do these two, Playlist 1, Playlist 1, 2. Got. Click Save, go back to Final Cut Pro. And then what I'm going to do, just to show you here, I'll open up bring that Judy template over again, bring it down here. And if we go here, select that. Now you'll see that it's actually, I don't have to go in double click in here. It just saves me a little bit more time. So the more work you do inside of Motion ahead of time, the more time you'll save in the future with future projects. So if you're someone that's creating a lot of, let's say, bar mitzvah videos or wedding videos, and you want to do this graphic, now this is going to save you time. You do all the work ahead of schedule, and then in the future, you're just going to whiz by. And you can even create your own templates and sell these templates on your own or whatever you want to do. So now I can call this Happy Music. There you go. And by user, same thing. I can just select it. Done. Selected drop zone well. I can now go in here. I can do it from here now since all the images got brought over. Click Apply Clip, and there we go. I can just double click on the actual drop zone, move it around, and done. So hopefully this shows you how you can create your own template. So for whatever you want to do, if it's for the Spotify playlist or anything else you kind of want to mock up, you can do this. I don't know if I can sell this kind of stuff on my store because it is a creation of Spotify, but now you know how you can make your own mock-ups and make your own style. What I would do is I'll go in there and change things even more if you want, but at least it will get you going and show you how you can create your own templates. So if you have any tutorial requests, or if there's anything you want me to show you how I would do things, or if you want me to give you some feedbacks on your own creations, on your own work, let me know. I'm here to help. So thank you very much for your valuable time. Make sure you visit my website at motionmastertemplates.com, or you can see some of my own client work at dason.com. All right. Thank you for your valuable time and have an amazing day. Please be sure to visit motionmastertemplates.com for over 100 templates for Final Cut Pro. Click on Browse All Templates, and then you can search and look for the template that is right for you. Also, please be sure to go to Categories and click on Free to look at all the free templates you can download on the website. If you have any questions, please be sure to contact me. Thank you and have an amazing day.